Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Developing a Proper Worldview. This is going to be episode number 74, and we're starting part 5 of our series. Um, we've covered part 1 was the gospel, part 2 was creationism, part 3 was the American Empire, and part 4 that we just finished up was looking into 9/11, the controversy surrounding 9/11. So now we're coming into part 5, which is going to look at martial law and the enforcement of an authoritarian state. Um, so, as always, if you happen to be catching this randomly or you're new to the channel and this is one of the first videos that's popped up, these are done in a sequential order. So if you go back and watch them in that order, I think that's going to be most beneficial. I don't think it's you're gonna, unless you're already familiar with everything, you're not really going to be able to um, grasp fully the concepts we're attempting to lay out here in showing um, the biblical worldview of this new world order system that we're in, the beast system that is coming into fruition in the world. And I'm not going to go through a long introduction. You know, we've covered that ad nauseum. So, if you're watching at this point and you followed along the whole time, I'm sure you're getting sick and tired of hearing those introductions as well. But if you're new, I really, really, really want to emphasize the importance of watching these in order, just so you can. That's why it's called developing a proper worldview. It's a step-by-step process as we come to understand the world we live in, from a biblical perspective. And so, I want to start just by apologizing if I'm a little off today. Um, I've had neck and shoulder problems for like the last 10 years, and it's really bothering me today. And a little stuffed up, as you can hear. That's I've been perpetual as well. I've always had sinus issues, and then I work on a computer all day long, and then when I'm done, I'm either jumping on here doing ministry or I'm on my phone or whatever. And I think that's caused me to have vision problems. So I've been really struggling with my if my eyes are red. Like I had a brother point out one time. He said all your videos, your eyes are just red, and I think it's probably because of all the screen time that I put in. But so forgive me for that, and forgive me if I'm a little off today. But and then I'm having computer issues as well, which I don't know if there's anybody out there that can give me some pointers, because I don't understand why I would be having computer issues. But this computer I'm on right now, it always runs so extremely slow, and it don't make sense to me because it's a relatively new computer, um, and I virtually do nothing on it except for these videos. That's the only time I use it, so I just don't understand why it's always running so slow. Um, I had problems starting it up here, starting up the video. Uh, the mechanism, the program that I use to record these videos was having issues. So if there's glitches or delays or anything like that, I do apologize about that. Um, but all right, part 5. So we've explored. You have to have that foundation of the gospel, because God is the creator of this world. You know, this is His world. History is His story, and things are moving according to His plan. And He's given us insight into parts of those plans in His scriptures. He's told us that there's a beast system coming in the last days, a worldwide empire that is going to be very anti-Christian, anti-God, and it's going to be an authoritative system that persecutes Christians, that hunts down and imprisons and kills Christians, and it's going to be a system that uses the economy to cut Christians off. It's going to require everybody to take a mark in the hand or in the forehead And if you don't have that mark, you won't be able to participate in the economy. But if you take that mark, you're going to suffer the wrath of God. And it's aligning with the enemy. That mark is kind of going to be the line in the sand. Um, Ultimately, from that perspective, saying, choose a side. And the in Psalm 2, we're told that the kings and the rulers of this world plot and plan against God and against Christ, and are trying to get rid of his rule and reign over them. And we learn throughout the scriptures that Satan is the god of this world, little g, and that the kingdoms belong to him, and he gives them to whomever he wishes. And so when we see evil prospering in this world, we can understand why, because we have that biblical perspective. We understand that this is part of the plan, that currently, right now, the devil is allowed to reign, and he's allowed to put things into place, and he is the authority. He holds sway over everybody who's not born again, and specifically over kings and rulers, those in high authority positions. And so when we see them talking about a new world order, talking about world government, and moving countries in the direction of authoritarianism, moving countries in the direction of eliminating freedoms, we can understand that because the Bible, we have the Bible as our foundation. We understand that these things must come to pass. But we also have a great hope. We don't fear those that can kill the body. We trust Christ. We trust God. We know that he's in control, and that if you're with him, if you're born again, all things work together for our good and for his glory, including our deaths and imprisonments. So we have nothing to fear. And then part 2, we looked at creationism, just defeating the pseudoscience of evolution. Part 3, we looked at the American Empire, really the muscle behind the New World Order system. And then part 4, which we just finished, we were looking at 9/11, just because really it was the key issue in our lifetime, I think, that really advanced the New World Order agenda. And so now in part 5, we're getting into what this beast system will look like as far as the persecution goes. We've seen persecution before, and currently there's countries where Christians are persecuted. And during the Dark Ages, the Roman Catholic Antichrist Whore of Babylon system persecuted Christians as well. But we live in a time where technology is so advanced that there's a system in place now, a technocracy of sorts, where everything is monitored, everything is known. And so like that brings the idea of persecution to another level, because it would be pretty hard to flee from that. There's nowhere in the world to go anymore. America was like the last beacon of hope, and that's been corrupted for a long time now. And just the technology. So we're gonna be looking at several documentaries that show the system that's in place, the plans that they have, the movements that we've seen in our lifetime that should alarm people, that should alert people, that should go, oh, wait up now, look what they're doing, look where that's going. Let's connect the dots here and see where this is going. So I think it's really important to look at that. We're going to start with a documentary called Police State. This is actually the 4th edition. There's Police State 1, which I believe came out prior to 9/11. And then there's Police State 2, which I believe came out right around 9/11. And then Police State 3, which was put out a couple years later. And then we have Police State 4, which is the one we're going to be looking at. The reason I skipped the first 3 is I feel like this 4th one does a good enough job of summarizing everything. And those first 3 weren't really well done. They didn't have the production value behind them that this 4th one does. They're still worth watching. I would highly recommend that you go back and watch them. Police State 1, Police State 2, which I think is just called Police, or maybe Police State 1 is called Police State 2000, because it was in the year 2000. But anyways, there's 3 of them that are worth watching that are going to give you additional information. I'm not sure 4 touches on everything that's touched in those ones. But 4th is, I think, the most well done. It had money behind it, obviously. They did a better job of producing it, making it more visually appealing. And so that's the one we're going to watch. And then we've got several others that we're going to look into as well. But Police State 4, and without any further ado, let's jump into it. Okay, here we go. Starts out with a Thomas Jefferson quote here.
I hereby declare this to be an unlawful assembly.
We've all seen enough riots and things like this that alone ought to be alarming. Like, the police force was originally formed to protect and serve the citizens. Like, a police force is the thin blue line between us and tyranny. It was set up to protect citizens from a tyrannical government. But the police force, and I don't know when it happened, 60s, 70s, I don't know, it was militarized, where they're now trained more like a military than a police force, with a purpose of serving the government, serving the authority. You know, they're just to follow orders, and they've been turned a lot more vicious, where instead of just the friendly neighborhood cop with the baton and the blue uniform and the cap on, now they're looking like this, like SWAT team, you know, like just like military. And they view us as the enemy. Matter of fact, Officer Jack McLam, who I've mentioned in previous videos, taught that the police are now taught that it's their duty to protect the system. And so when citizens are unruly or whatever, rather than like, the mindset ought to be, okay, are they unruly because their constitutional rights are being violated, in which case I need to protect them? Now they're taught that anybody unruly, if they don't follow the orders, if they don't follow the orders of the system is now in danger. And if the system collapses, there will be anarchy in the streets, and the entire world will fall apart. So they're taught that, you know, through the college courses that they take, through the training that they get. They're taught that the system needs to be protected from the citizens. Whereas before, the way it was supposed to be is that the citizens were to be protected from the system. So it's been reversed, and it's like I say, it's been militarized. It's a lot more vicious and lethal now.
It's totally fine.
Finding all info warriors.
Our love for our neighbors gotta speak loud and try to silence. Withhold, they try.
Go to Pittsburgh now with video cameras.
Your world is going salvation's in your smile. Just when I realize, see that
The Republic is falling right now.
World leaders arriving in Pittsburgh for the G20 summit are finding a city on lockdown.
And that's when my eardrums were blasting. And as that happened, I basically turned around, saw about 40 riot police assisted by military.
They're closing in. Run! Get up! I told you!
You must leave immediately.
This was the talk of the town in Hardin on Thursday. Mercedes decked out in the City of Hardin Police Department decals and driven by American Police Force members.
We're not disclosing the name of our parent company.
We know the guy that owns the company, but we've never seen this name before.
Excuse me, you just dropped a bomb on us. This is Red Dawn. Foreign mercenary group admitted driving around doing police work with Hardin Police next to their American Police Force logos. This is insane.
Passengers describe a terror attack and the arrest of a suspect.
So he's a controlled asset, and of course it's not a matter of failure to connect the dots. The FBI now has 5 versions of their story.
Can you add how they were already getting in Yemen? That's now confirmed.
And the scanning machines that we currently are beginning to deploy.
They told me to go through the scanner, and I said no. It's a real act of submission. They were involved in a cover-up. Kurt, this is huge.
The Federal Emergency Management Agency coordinates the federal government's role in preparing.
You notice the Illuminati pyramid on FEMA's logo?
For preventing, mitigating the effects of, responding to, and recovering from all domestic disasters, whether natural or man-made, including acts of terror. Its beginnings can be traced to disaster legislation passed in 1803 to provide assistance to a New Hampshire town following a fire. Following a string of natural disasters in the 60s and 70s, President Jimmy Carter signed Executive Order 12127 and merged nearly 10 federal agencies into what we now know as FEMA. In March 2003, FEMA joined 22 other federal agencies to become part of Homeland Security. In 2005, Hurricane Katrina hit the Gulf Coast and most notably the city of New Orleans. Federal and local authorities encouraged those who could not evacuate the city to go to the Superdome to ride out the storm, where there would be assistance to take care of them. This is how your government cares for you. This is a FEMA camp.
And that's all we're hearing about are the people in New Orleans. Those are the only ones that we're seeing on television are the scumbags who were left in New Orleans or who decided to stay in New Orleans, and they're getting all of the attention.
The scumbags left in New Orleans? Those are citizens, you know? It was so, like, I remember when that happened, it was so disgusting. They trapped these people here. They wouldn't let them leave the city. They could have just left the city and gotten to safety, you know? There was all that flooding and stuff going on, but there was the open roads. Like, people could have just walked out of the city, but they didn't. They rounded them up and put them in there, and there was people dying in there, dead bodies, according to testimonies that I've heard. There was rapes and murders going on in there, and they wouldn't let them leave. They just locked them down into this place. It was insane what happened in 2005. I remember, like, the media even reported about like the Bush administration authorizing supplies to go in, and then, like, the supplies were being held outside the city. They wouldn't bring them in. Like, I remember a video of, like, trucks full of water, drinking water, and they wouldn't be able to. They weren't allowed to come in. And the military was going door to door, confiscating guns and stuff. It was like a trial run for lockdowns, militarized lockdowns.
I have made 3 police state films. I have also, written books and news articles on the subject. And the problem is, when you cover FEMA camps, is there's so much evidence, so many congressional hearings, so many news articles, so many documents. The problem is knowing where to start. Executive orders. This is how they introduce you. See, they're introducing it all. They've denied they're building all this for all these decades. Now as they unveil it, they're putting their PR spin on it. So Executive Order 10,990 allows the government to take over all modes of transportation and control of highways and seaports. That's been reaffirmed under PDD 51, under the John Warner Defense Authorization Act and others. Executive Order 10,995 allows the government to seize and control the communication media. Executive Order 10,997 allows the government to take over all electrical power.
The reason these are important is these are standing orders. Like, presidents pass them without going through Congress. Congress is supposed to represent the people. They're supposed to be the ones to make the laws. This is the executive branch bypassing the legislative branch and just making their own laws. And these executive orders, all they have to do is declare a state of emergency, and they can enforce them without that legal process, without representing us. Bypassing, I mean, Congress doesn't represent us anymore anyways. It's all just a show. So this is just them saying, let's just bypass the show and just do what we're going to do. But if they declare an emergency, they can enforce these. Like, think back to the lockdowns recently. They had curfews. Like, that's insane, You're going to tell me, a free American citizen, that I can't go to my Bible study because of, well, you know what it was. I can't say it because YouTube will ban this.
Gas, petroleum, fuels, and minerals. Executive Order 10998 allows the government to seize all means of transportation, including personal cars, trucks, and vehicles of any kind, and total control over all highways, seaports, and waterways. Executive Order 10999 allows the government to take over all food.
Just as you're hearing these, think about it. They don't pass these arbitrarily. These things are in place for a reason, because they plan on using them one day. And think about what society would look like when they take over everything, shut everything down, and bring in their military, police and army and whatnot, and enforce these things.
Resources and farms. Executive Order 11,000 allows the government to mobilize civilians into work brigades under government supervision. Executive Order 11,001 allows the government to take over all health, education, welfare functions. What's happening through the imploded economy that the foreign central banks are engineering? Do they make you be beholden to the government? Designates the Postmaster General to operate a national registration of all persons. That goes on through the Selective Service. Executive Order 11003 allows the government to take over all airports, aircraft, including commercial aircraft. Remember when they shut down all flights after 9/11? Executive Order 11004 allows the Housing and Finance Authority to relocate communities, build new housing with public funds, designate areas to be abandoned, and establish new locations for populations. Remember Louisiana, Mississippi, Katrina?
Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job. The FEMA director is working 24 hours.
Executive Order 11005 allows the government to take over all railroads, inland waterways, and public storage facilities. Executive Order 11051 specifies the responsibility of the Office of Emergency Planning and gives authorization to put all executive orders into effect in times of increased international tensions and economic or financial crises. Executive Order 11310 grants authority to the Department of Justice to enforce the plans set out in executive orders, to institute industrial support, to establish judicial and legislative liaison, to control all aliens, to operate penal and correctional institutions, and to advise and assist the President. So that's your FEMA camps. Executive Order 11049 assigns emergency preparedness functions to federal departments and agencies, consolidating 21 operational executive orders issued at a 15-year period. Executive Order 11921 allows the Federal Emergency Preparedness Agency to develop plans to establish control over the mechanisms of production and distribution of energy sources, wage, salaries, credit, and the flow of money in U.S. financial institution in any undefined national emergency. It also provides that when a state of emergency is declared by the President, Congress cannot review the action for 6 months. PDD 51 says never. Up on screen are photocopies of the Miami Herald, and this goes back into the 1980s when they had congressional hearings dealing with shadow government and martial law. There's the headline, The Secret Government. And it talks about secret summits, a plan to take over the government. And it shows the people that were in charge of the continuity of government, Dick Cheney and others. And then we have a congressional hearing where we have Congressman Jack Brooks and others during Iran-Contra bringing up the secret plans, and they're told by congressmen in a way that that can't be discussed. It's a national security issue.
In the 1980s, the concentration camp program got a big boost.
Colonel North, in your work at the NSC, were you not assigned at one time to work on plans for the continuity of government in the event of a major disaster? Mr. Chairman.
I believe that question touches upon a highly sensitive and classified area, so may I request that you not touch upon that, sir.
I was particularly concerned, Mr. Chairman, because I read in Miami papers and several others that there had been a plan developed by that same agency, a contingency plan in the event of emergency that would suspend the American Constitution. And I was deeply concerned about it and wondered if that was the area in which he had worked. I believe it was.
May I most respectfully request that that matter not be touched upon at this stage. If we wish to get into this, I'm certain arrangements can be made for an executive session.
And tragically, the only member who got close was Jack Brooks, and he was stopped by the chairman. But the truth of the matter is that, yes, you do have those standby provisions, and the plans are there, and the statutory emergency plans are there, whereby you could, in the name of stopping terrorism, apprehend, invoke the military, and arrest Americans and hold them in detention camps.
Throughout history, criminals get control of governments. They use phony crises to enslave the public. And they're taking your pension funds, they're taking your money, they're raising the taxes on you, they are going to squeeze the daylights out of us all, and that's why they're geared up for martial law and to take the media over, because this is quite a gamble by the establishment. You know, we should have grand juries indicting the bankers and having them turn states' evidence against each other, and this whole criminal shadow government, national security state should be exposed. Everything it's engineered and bring in total tyranny and start arresting people for their speech. So it either goes into tyranny or into liberty. And believe me, folks, liberty is probably where it's going, because this tyranny is so horrible, they've got planned.
I mean, they've got the system so firmly entrenched now that we can just say it's a done deal, you know? Like, they're just waiting for the opportune time to unleash this on us, but they've got all the technology, they've got everything they need. There isn't going to be resistance. The vast majority of people out there are sheep. They live in that mindset of just, I'll just keep my head down and I do what I'm told, and nothing bad will happen to me, and just let the bad things happen to my neighbors. I'll just turn a blind eye to that and pretend it'll never come to my front door. And that's how most people are living nowadays. So they could unleash this. It's like a reality, man. It's the curtain's just waiting to be dropped. It's there. It's in place. There's nothing more standing in its way.
Let's go ahead and go to Congressman a year and a half ago on the Homeland Security Board wanting to know about PDD 51. Now, this fight went on for a year. The cover sheet of Presidential Decision Directive 51 stated the president's a dictator. Congress has no power during any emergency, including economic. So now Congress isn't involved in continuity of government when Congress is co-equal to the president and the courts. In fact, the Founding Fathers said Congress was above the courts and the president, but then later courts said, no, they're equal. Now they're saying they're not. Okay? Because it's harder for a dictator to take control in the Congress because there's 500 people. Separation of powers. The president is where your main dictator will come from, so it's the weakest. It follows the orders of Congress and then executes those orders. But then the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee said, I am co-equal with the president in national security. Let me see PDD 51. They were told no. But the cover sheet alone states the president's a dictator. Then we see last year PDD 51 being executed and members of Congress, Senator Inhofe and others, being told martial law will be declared if you don't hand total control and immunity over to the banks. And they followed orders and did it. So the martial law is now in place. And with that comes the FEMA camps. Will we get to that place? Not if we expose it. But we're already got our neck in the noose here. Is the executioner going to pull the lever? I don't know. Let's continue with the congressman talking about PDD 51.
Most Americans would agree that it would be prudent to have a plan to provide for the continuity of government and the rule of law in case of a devastating terrorist attack or natural disaster. A plan that provides for the cooperation, the coordination, and continued functioning of all three branches of the government. The Bush administration tells us they have such a plan. They introduced a little sketchy public version that's clearly inadequate and doesn't really tell us what they have in mind. But they said, don't worry, there's a detailed classified version. But now they've denied the entire Homeland Security Committee of the United States House of Representatives access to their so-called detailed plan to provide for continuity of government. They say, trust us. Trust us, the people who brought us Katrina, to be competent in face of a disaster. Trust us, the people who brought us warrantless wiretapping and other excesses eroding our civil liberties. Trust us. Maybe the plan just really doesn't exist and that's why they won't show it to us. I don't know. Or maybe there's something there that's outrageous. The American people need their elected representatives to review this plan for the continuity of government.
All right, that's Congressman Peter DeFazio. Now, that was a year and a half ago. Mr. DeFazio, the cover sheet says the president's a dictator and that Congress has no authority over continuity of government. That's why they're now saying Congress can't see it, because they're declaring and executing that power. Now, we fast forward a year plus to October 3rd, and here is Congressman Sherman, who we interviewed here on air, other congressmen we interviewed, and Senator Inhofe, saying they marched in and told them martial law will be declared if you don't do this. So we go from the 80s to where don't talk about the martial law plans and the FEMA camps. If you want to know about that, you can know about it in executive session, Congressman Jack Brooks, to, oh, Congress, you're not allowed to see the plans now. To Congress, do what we say, we're under martial law.
The only way they can pass this bill is by creating and sustaining a panic atmosphere. That atmosphere is not justified. Many of us were told in private conversations that if we voted against this bill on Monday, that the sky would fall, the market would drop 2,000 or 3,000 points the first day, another couple thousand the second day, and a few members were even told that there would be martial law in America if we voted no. That's what I call fear-mongering.
So we have the congressman on with us. We only have him for 5 minutes, 6 minutes. Congressman Brad Sherman, thank you for coming on, sir.
Good to be with you. You know, Wall Street used these panic tactics to get us to pass this $700 billion, what the bill really is $700 billion in unmarked bills. They said the market would drop by 4,000 points, blood would flow in the streets, and lions would be devouring children in the parks of Los Angeles. Now that the bill is passed, our economy is still going to be very bad.
The bailout money so far has been set aside to buy shares in banks.
I still don't understand what that bailout did. I'm not, like, I don't understand how our economy works. I'm not a financial person. I understand that the Federal Reserve is an evil corporation. I mean, our founding fathers were so worried about banks that they put in the Constitution that Congress would have the power to print and issue money. And Congress turned that power over to private bankers in 1913 when they set up the Federal Reserve Bank, which essentially gave control over American finances to the Illuminati, to the New World Order. But that's about the extent of my knowledge. Like, I don't understand how fiat currency works and all the nuances of our economy system, and I don't understand what happened, what that bailout money did. I understand, so banks had been making poor loans for years, and by poor loans I mean giving money to people with bad credit that couldn't pay them back. And so they're just forking out all this money until eventually the banks are going to collapse because they're not getting anything back and they put too much out. But that's all staged too, because the Federal Reserve can just keep pumping money in. So, like, I don't understand. It was obviously a transfer of wealth. Was it just to get a bunch of the elite rich? You know, mid-level elite people like the Obamas? Or what, like, I just don't understand the scheme of it. What happened there? Was it the New World Order system taking more control over local small banks? Like, because I would assume there's still some banks, maybe credit unions, that, well, they're all indebted to the Federal Reserve System, aren't they? Are there any banks that aren't part of the Federal Reserve System? I don't know. I guess I just don't understand what the purpose of it was. Maybe just to put us more in debt, but I don't get that either. Like, what are they achieving there? We're all so dependent on their system right now. I don't know why they would need to put us further in debt. They control it all anyways. So I don't know what the purpose is there. I guess we'll get into banking further down the line. There's a few documentaries that I've heard really good things about, and I own copies of them that I've never watched. So I'll watch those prior to doing a video on them. But that's way down the line. But G. Edward Griffin, I guess, would be the go-to source for that. He's the one who wrote Creatures from Jekyll Island, the book on exposing the Federal Reserve System. And every time I've heard him talk, man, he's genius level. That guy is amazing. Watch everything you can find from G. Edward Griffin.
$250 billion, $40 billion to AIG, and $60 billion yet to be committed, leaving the remaining $350 billion for future use.
We've got to do everything we can to focus people's attention on this bill as it's carried out, because it allows Paulson to go up to Wall Street. He can give money to one firm. He cannot return phone calls from another firm. He can take. He can, if he finds out which firms are donating to the 527 organizations, which take secret contributions and then make political advertising. He can look at the RNC donor list. He can do anything he wants.
Let's go back to what you said on the floor in the last 24 hours about members of Congress. And I've talked to some, they're afraid to even come on and talk about it, being told there will be martial law in America and we'll just do this with or without you if you don't do this. That is incredible. And I just had the former head of the Treasury on earlier, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts from Reagan, had a policy saying that this gives them economic martial law. Is that not terrorism? Is it? I mean, is not the definition to threaten harm or carry out harm for a political aim, sir?
Well, but keep in mind, we passed the bill, and I'm told the market is down.
Sir, here's the $64 million question. You and other members of Congress say, yeah, well, there were some people threatening martial law, but we don't, think they meant it. They were just trying to fearmonger, which I call terrorism, into it. That's a huge issue. Specifically, sir, we need to know names. Who told you that they were told that martial law and blood in the streets, as you said, would happen?
Private conversations between members on the floor, you really can't reveal without the permission of the other
I understand, but were there arm twisters coming up, or were they scared? I mean, how was it said specifically?
What we have to do is expose those circumstances where we're bailing out a particular firm, and how many of the executives at that firm are continuing to make $1 million a year, $5 million a year, $20 million a year. There's going to be a lot of information that is not public, and it's going to take investigative reporters to find out things that congressmen can't find out and that the public is not going to be aware of. I have to go right now, but it's been a pleasure being with you.
Somebody in D.C. was feeding you guys quite a story prior to the bailout. A story that if we didn't do this, we were going to see something on the scale of the Depression. There were people that were talking about, martial law being instituted, civil unrest, all this kind of stuff. Who was feeding you this information?
That's Henry Paulson. We had a conference call early on. It was on a Friday, I think a week and a half before the vote on October 1st. So it would have been the middle, 19th of September, we had a conference call. In this conference call, and I guess there's no reason for me not to repeat what he said, but he painted this picture you just described. He said, this is serious. This is the most serious thing that we face. It's going to be far worse than the Great Depression of the 30s. And all these things, he was very descriptive of exactly what would happen if we didn't buy out these toxic assets, which he abandoned the day after he got the money.
Mafia,
Okay.
Give us this money or bad things are going to happen. And that's, intimidation at the least. It's pretty wicked. But again, I don't understand what was the purpose. Why did they need that $700 billion so badly? What did it accomplish for the New World Order agenda?
Here's our top story. Obama signed this 7 days ago, on January 11th, 2010. And I spent a few days reading over it, checking the U.S. Code, checking the laws that it mentions, and it ties into Presidential Decision Directive 51, signed by Bush. And remember, Congress wanted to get the full Presidential Decision Directive and accompanying executive order.
Would be prudent to have a plan to provide for the continuity of government and the rule of law in case of a devastating terrorist attack. The Bush administration tells us they have such a plan. But now they've denied the entire Homeland Security Committee of the United States House of Representatives.
And Bush declared national security and wouldn't even let Homeland Security Committee, which is supposedly co-equal with the president, wouldn't even let them have access to it. But the cover sheet stated that for any emergency, including economic, anywhere in the world, that the executive is over the legislative and judicial, over the courts, over the Congress, which is unconstitutional. It's supposed to have separation of powers. The people aren't supposed to be divided, what the government always tries to do. The government's supposed to be divided so that you can't ever get a dictatorship. Well, this is what the founders said. This is what America is. It's why we love the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So President Bush signed this national security directive. And it says the continuity of government program will enhance the credibility of our national security posture and enable more rapid, effective response and recovery. And it goes on. The catastrophic emergency means any incident, regardless of location in the world, that results in extraordinary levels of mass casualties, damages, or disruption severely affecting the U.S. population, infrastructure, environment, economy, or government functions. And under this, the president is over the governors, he's over the legislatures of the states, he's over the Congress, and Congress has no authority. And then Congress asked for the full secret document, and it's still classified to this day. Obama has continued breaking his promise of transparency and has not released the full text of this, another memorandum. Connected into this is his new announcement. His new announcement. He is creating, with this executive order titled Establishment of the Council of Governors, it says here in the document that they are taking the governors, the states, the police forces, everything under the control of NORTHCOM, that's the Pentagon, and Homeland Security. But don't worry, the states have their say. The president is going to appoint the 10 members, 5 governors from the Republican and 5 governors from the Democrats. Kind of like Bush called the 9/11 Commission independent when he appointed it, or Janet Reno appointed her own Waco investigation team. This would be like Hitler appointing his own Nuremberg judges. I mean, or Al Capone at his own court case. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. And there it is at whitehouse.gov, the executive order for anyone that wishes to see that for themselves. Separately, I have the Rand Corporation's plan that they put out last year. And this plan, the Stability Police Force of the United States, justification, options for creating U.S. capabilities. This has already been implemented covertly in the last 15 years. But now they're just being open about it. And it has all the maps here of how Stability Police Force headquarters to run your local city. They have systems for medium-sized police forces, large police forces. They have the stability unit for small police units. Again, Communist Russia had this. Communist China has this. Russian news is freaking out, saying America gets its own Politburo. On the Richter scale of tyranny, this is about a 10. And it goes back, because now all these conservative groups are going, oh my gosh, it's martial law. Oh my gosh, Obama's having a big power grab. And yes, he is. But Obama is just the teleprompter reading minion or frontman, just like Bush was. He's just better than Bush was at it. It is the system that's doing this. Big central banks threatened martial law in early October of 2008. Give the trillions, not 700 billion, but trillions of dollars. The overriding issue is we are under martial law right now. In 1986, under Rex 84, they opened 12 secret Army camps to test if they could keep them secret while they held federal. Now they hold state prisoners as well. Federal prisoners would then be given a few years off their sentence if they agreed to not tell family about it and to go to the labor camps. It is a labor camp, and under the revised military rules, it allows any U.S. citizens to be put in it under forced labor. Here is the Civilian Inmate Labor Camp Program, Army Regulation 210-35. It's exactly 30 pages long. I suggest you Google Civilian Inmate Labor Camp Program. Even if you don't have a computer, go to the library. This is important. Now, this is the big piece of news. This is to establish setting up prison labor camps, negotiations with correctional systems representatives to...
It's like Nazi Germany, and you might say, well, so what, criminals in prison, we should put them to work. Well, but the classification of what a criminal is changing. And it's not just rapists and murderers and bank robbers that are going to be considered criminals in a very short amount of time here. It's going to be Christians, gun owners, anybody who speaks out against the UN, anybody who talks about the New World Order. And you see that authoritarian system in place with the censorship. if you talk about certain topics, you're censored and blacklisted and lambasted on the media. Eventually, you'll be criminalized. You know, if you don't go along with the system, if you don't get in line with their agenda, if you speak out against the LGBTQ, if you speak out against trans, if you are against, eventually if you're against pedophilia, you're the criminal. You're the one that's going to be in prison and put into forced labor. If they don't, I mean, eventually they'll just kill us. But it's the reason this is important is like the New World Order system is being put in place. The persecuting system. The scriptures tell us that we're going to be persecuted. It's being put into place. And right now they're going, it's just used for, terrorists. But again, the definition of what a terrorist is going to change. It's going to change to, Janet Reno tried to do that after Waco, Texas, said that anybody who believes in the literal second coming of Christ, anybody who attends frequent Bible studies, anybody who is anti-UN, anybody who gives money to Christian causes, they are to be suspected as domestic terrorists. We are the target. So eventually, this system is going to be used against us.
Established prison camps, governing criteria, civilian inmate labor camps, policy statement, governing provisions for operating civilian inmate prison camps on Army installations, procedures for establishing a civilian inmate prison camp on Army installations, infrastructure, inter-service, interagency, and interdepartmental support agreements, working with local police at the FEMA camps. In 2002, I published my book, Descent into Tyranny. I've been covering it since 97 when it was declassified, but I put it in my book, Descent into Tyranny. This sucker was set up in 1986 at 12 camps. It's since doubled to 24. And from 86 to 97, secretly at labor camps, U.S. citizens, non-military prisoners, were worked on FEMA camps. Now, this was beta testing. They would tell them, you'll be given leniency and only serve half your sentence if you agree to labor. The minute you don't, you'll be sent back on these military bases, but you can't tell anybody national security. See, they were testing, can we keep camp secret from local police or get them to work with us? Can we keep camp secret from the media? So for 11 years, they kept this sucker secret. Reagan, Bush, Clinton. And then Clinton declassifies it and says it's a good thing in 97, and they double the number. We had secret copies of this when I first got on air in about 95, 96, with just the cover sheet of it, and people made fun of us and didn't believe it. Then it was declassified. This is from Army.mil. So here it is, the big kahuna. This is just one section of these, training the troops, training the infrastructure, creating the larger cadres to expand the archipelago of gulags. New legislation authorizes FEMA camps in the United States. And it says 6 major camps across the country with hundreds of sub-region camps. Now, if you watch my films and read the documents we put out, that's exactly what we said the camps are and how they operate, because we reverse engineered all this. The camps are already built. It's when they want to openly announce they're doing it that they then pass a law. And they say, oh, all these shut down military bases that they've been keeping refurbished and putting barbed wire facing in and putting in showers and bunks, and we knew that those were to be the FEMA camps, because in the FEMA documents and the congressional leaks and from people that worked at the camps, we knew, and we would list the camps. Then we noticed when it was declassified in 97 that the very camps that had been, quote, decommissioned.
Did you notice that on that footage a minute ago of the camp, there was playground equipment? Children's playground equipment? What kind of prison has children's playground equipment? Swings and slides and a little playhouse. That ought to be, that's frightening in itself. And I use the word frightening in the sense of alarming, because as Christians, we're not afraid of them. We know what's coming. We know the Lord has told us we're going to face persecution. We don't have to fear that. The worst they can do is kill us, and we get to go to glory then anyways. And God is sovereign over the whole thing. He's not going to allow anything to happen to you that's not meant to happen to you. And if it happens to you, it's meant for His glory. So we don't fear it. So when I say frightening, I just mean alarming, alerting. It should be cautionary. It should cause us to pay attention, to be on guard, to break out of this matrix of materialism and entertainment. And I'm guilty of it myself. It's hypnotizing. We're surrounded by pleasure sensors, that just do this, get that, do this, watch this, do that, that we're bombarded with that all the time. But things like this are to sober us and make us go, wait a minute, we're in a war, we're in a spiritual war, and the darkness is all around us, and we could be on the precipice of very perilous times. So we need to pay attention and be on guard, to have our hearts prepared, so that we're not caught off guard.
And under the base closure, because they'd said back in the 80s under Rex 84 they were going to use the camps in Congress. So we said, you want to know where the camps are? They're old military bases, and they're old POW camps from Italians, Germans, and Japanese. Guess what's in here? Guess what's in the bill? They've reintroduced the National Compulsory Service under H.R. 1444. It says for mandatory national service. Defense Department announces civilian expeditionary workforce in Pentagon Directive 1404.
I want to point something out about AJ here. I don't even know if I can say his name or if it'll get banned, but if you know him, you know him. The guy who's doing this documentary. There's a lot of negative stuff about him out there. But if you're familiar with him, and you're going to get familiar with him because we're going to watch a lot of his documentaries. We've already watched a few. But all he's doing is is research. He does the research. He puts in the countless hours that we don't do, or don't have the ability to, or don't know where to look, and gathers the research from mainstream media articles, from actual government documents, from the books of world leaders and politicians, gets their quotes, gets their articles, shows it to you, and explains it from the correct worldview. Now, I don't know whether or not he's a brother, but the only thing from his documentaries that I don't agree with is I think he thinks that we can stop this, and I don't think we can stop it. I think if the Lord could delay it, by putting all this information out there, it certainly doesn't look like that's going to happen. But he's got the right worldview. He understands that, okay, this is the New World Order, and here is the documents to show what's going on. Let me filter this stuff out for you. Let me explain it to you. Let me show it to you, and that's what he does. Now, if you watch his daily show, he's very angry and aggressive, and he's going a million miles an hour. But his documentaries are more slowed down and laying out the information piece by piece. During his show, it's just he's just blasting, and that can be a little bit overwhelming. And recently, he's gotten wrapped up in the whole Trump movement thing, very pro-Trump, and I think he's misled on that. But his documentaries are amazing.
10. It says management retains the authority to direct and assign civilian employees either voluntarily or involuntarily or on an unexpected basis to accomplish DoD mission. So see, they're saying they're going to create a 7 million man. That was in the New York Times. The Congress said. I kept saying 1 million because Obama said as big as our army, as big as the military. That'd be 1 million people. They say 7 million now, and that they're going to draft you into this, and they'll decide, no more draft boards, if you stay here or if you go overseas. But this just broke. I just showed you the earlier terror training manual saying those that talk about the Constitution are terrorists and are a danger to police, those that are in Second Amendment groups. Here is the MIAC strategic report, and this is 2/2009, the modern militia movement. And they mix in here people that believe there's 9 FEMA regions, people that believe there's a NAPTA superhighway, and they show the official NAPTA superhighway map the government put out. Doesn't exist. Those that don't want RFID chips being planted with them, and they mix it in then with white supremacists and others, and they say, we want you to be in the terrorist symbols. It's "Don't Tread on Me" flag of the Founding Fathers. You know, the flag of the Founding Fathers, all of it. We're going to go over this. This is amazing. They say in there that there is no such thing as a New World Order banking takeover, as hundreds of newspapers a day say there will be a new bank of the world that you pay carbon taxes to. It just doesn't exist. You're insane terrorist if you believe it. You know, I remember my grandfathers, and it was normal just when you were at the dinner table, or even my dad, to explain how governments work and how...
You realize how insane that is? You got like the New York Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine putting out articles about the New World Order, the New World Order banking system, and at the same time you got the FBI and police agencies saying, oh, if people believe in the New World Order, they're terrorists, they're conspiracy theorists. It's George Orwell doublespeak. It's insane.
History worked, and they taught the military. You don't have the military on the streets, and we're here to defend the Constitution, Bill of Rights, not what the president says if it violates that. And we've gone from that now to a strategic report, 2/2009, the modern militia movement, and then they mix gun owner groups, pro-gun groups in with white supremacists. They say those that believe in a new world order, these theories vary, but most always involve a globalist dictatorship. They show, and I'm putting on screen right now, official North American Union SPP maps that have been on CNN of how they're going to have every major highway be an international toll road from Mexico up into the deep north of Canada. And they just say it doesn't exist. These people are insane. I mean, this is a high level of psyop, isn't it, Gerald Salente?
Well, you know, that's the way they always do things. You know, they lump them all together, and it's one size fits all. I have a question. Do you believe that the military will fire on its people?
They're going to stage riots, and then it's going to look like, oh, they stopped the riots. It's reasonable to set the precedent. Like, oh, we do have FEMA camps for medical care and where you can stay. You know, the troops are here to help at car wrecks. That's how they're rolling it out. And I believe that, I think the way they're going to manipulate the military, I think a lot of them are going to fire on U.S. citizens.
Because that's a question we're going to pose in the Trends Journal in the next edition. And I happen to agree with you. They'll stage riots. We always see these people that they call anarchists that always have black, always have dressed in black and have masks on.
They've been caught being police sorry, go ahead.
No, exactly. No, I agree with you. And I think that they are going to fire on the people, unfortunately.
No, don't shoot me, please! Don't shoot me! I haven't done anything! Don't shoot!
In this training manual that's going out to police everywhere in the country, it has a "Don't Tread on Me" flag. It shows America freedom to fascism and the film Zeitgeist in it. We just showed that, and shows it next to the Turner Diaries, which was a white supremacist thing about killing police. So see how they do guilt by association. I mean, this is just off the charts, and this was sent to me by the Missouri Information Analyst Center. Police officer sent it to me. That's where they got it from. And I've seen these in Texas versions and others. It's the same thing, but they're updating it. I mean, how do they say none of this exists and then mix in mainstream things that are happening with white supremacists and tell police that people are dangerous if they're into this?
Good evening, my fellow Americans. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportion. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizen can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense, the prospect of domination of the nation's scholars by federal employment, project allocations, and the power of money is ever present and is gravely to be regarded. We must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of the scientific, technological elite. We cannot mortgage the material assets of our grandchildren without risking the loss also of their political and spiritual heritage.
I think that's a good spot to stop for now. All right, so yeah, it's a very good documentary. Like I said, it's important to realize that this system is already in place. Like, it already exists. FEMA camps already exist. Executive orders already exist. They already hold all the cards. For whatever reason, they just haven't decided to roll it out yet. I think it's probably the Second Amendment that stops them. I think they're still worried about the amount of resistance they would meet, because there's a whole lot of gun owners out in the country, which is why they're continually pushing for the elimination of gun rights. That's why the media is always hammering that every time there's a shooting. You know, we need stricter gun laws. We need bans. We need this and that. And if once they get that, I would assume that they'll roll this system out. If that is in fact what's hindering them, I don't know. I mean, everything's playing out according to God's timetable. So, and the Lord could bring revival. You know, He could put a huge dent in it and stop this system for 100 or 200 years and give us a reprieve. We don't know. We don't know what the Lord has planned, but we need to be prepared. We see these things in place, and we see the system already here. We see that. Sorry about that. We see that the scriptures talk about a new world order, and we see that the whole blueprint already in place. We see the scriptures talking about a mark in the hand or forehead without which you won't be able to buy or sell. We see that already in place with the RFID chips, implantable microchips, banking being done cashless. We see that whole thing being set up for this. We see the Bible say that Christians will be persecuted and martyred. We see this technological military system set up that it wants to target Christianity, wants to target biblical morals and ethics. So we can see it all coming to fruition, and we need to be prepared. And by prepared, that just means have your heart ready. Be ready to lose everything. Be okay with that. You know, have it settled in your heart that you know, we have to choose, you know, Christ or the world. And be okay with giving up the world. You know, if they throw us in prison, they torture us, they kill us, whatever. You know, if they take everything, if we can't buy or sell, you know, okay. We're gonna serve Christ, and we're gonna proclaim the gospel in the hopes that we can pull as many people out of that system as possible before the iron fist drops, so to speak. So, anyways, that's what I got for you guys here tonight. As always, I appreciate you watching. I love you, and Lord willing, we'll talk to you next time.